In this video, we'll be dealing with the sign out button, okay? And this is what the sign out button looks like in our finished project. And as you can see, the sign out button is being rendered as part of the navigation bar, okay? The sign out button is conditionally rendered. It is visible for users that are signed in, but not visible for users that are signed out, that are not signed in. Okay, so this is our current project. Currently, we do not have the sign out button in place. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing in this video. Okay, so first off, we are going to be creating the sign out button. So we're going to go to our component directory, then we're going to create the file for the component. Let's call it logout button, okay, .tsx. Okay, it's such a simple button, but because we'll be having an event handler for when the user clicks the button, so it's going to be a client component. And for client components, you need to have this directory. Okay, so now let's create a button react functional component. Okay, so that works. All right, this is going to be button. Okay, button. All right, and the button is going to have a class name attribute. Okay, so the classes are kind of numerous, so I'm just going to copy and paste them all. All right, so if you save this now, okay, we've not rendered it, so we will not be able to see it for now. And inside of the button, we are going to be having a loading state. Okay, so we are going to use states here. So we're going to have a const, let's call it is pending, or let's call it is loading. Should we call it pending or loading? We'll be using pending right from time, so let's just call it pending. Okay, and then let's say this is set is pending. Okay, this is going to be use states, use states. Okay, we need to import that. I'm going to get rid of use. We are not using use for now. Okay, so when signing out is in progress, then this is going to be true, but when it is not in progress, it is going to be false by default. So we need to give this a default value of false. All right, and here we'll be having a loading state, but so that we'll not repeat what we've done before, I'm just going to go to let's go to our sign our submit button. We have a submit button. Okay, so this is same thing we want to do. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that and paste that here. There's no need of repeating same thing we've done earlier, so I'm going to import this. Okay, and we are not going to call this default and pending test. I'm just going to say this is signing out. Okay, and this is going to be sign out. Okay, this is going to be string sign out. Okay, that should work for us. Okay, so this is all about our sign out button for now. So we need to render this in the navigation bar. All right, okay, this should not be here. All right, so this is what should be here. Okay, so I'm going to paste that here. Okay, so now let's render this. I hope this is not going to stop our component from rendering. Let's render it first. Okay, so we're going to go to navigation. All right, so after this link, okay, so we are going to have a logout button. Let's see what it looks like first before we start dealing with the conditional rendering. Okay, so we're going to go to okay. So now we have a sign out button, but as it is now, it is not conditionally rendered. Okay, even if we signed out now, but we've not handled the signing out logic. If we signed out now as it currently is, it will be visible even for users that are not signed in. So we need to conditionally render it. So we need to check if our user is already signed in, and we've already done something like that in our dashboard page. Okay, you know, this will only be true for users that are signed in. If you check the data type of this user role, you see it is either string or null. If this header is available on the headers list, then it is going to be string. If it is not available, then it is going to be null. So we can easily check in navigation, we can easily check if the user role is present. If it is not null, then that means the user is signed in. But if it is not, that means the user is signed out. But we will not be using that method. The reason is that, dashboard is part of the pages that our middleware is running for. It's part of the pages that we are running the middleware for. So it is always, so we are so sure that this will always be present. But for our navigation, this navigation bar, it will be rendered for all pages in our application. Either the middleware runs for the page or the middleware does not run for the page. So navigation will always be rendered for all pages. So in that case, we cannot solely depend on these headers, because what if the page that is to be rendered at that moment is not part of the pages that middleware is being executed for? So in this navigation now, we are first going to check if this header is available on our request. If it is available, we just use the ID and role to determine if our user is signed in. But if it is not available, then there is the possibility that the page that is currently being rendered is not part of the pages that middleware has been executed for. Okay, so in that case, we'll be validating the user session separately and check if the user session is available in our Redis database. So all of that, we are going to be creating a dedicated function for them. Okay, so we are going to be calling the dedicated function. We are going to get current user. Okay, it is not accepting any parameter. Okay, so we are going to be creating this function in our sessions.ts. Okay, so let's go down here. So let's just export it first. Export. Okay, export. Okay, then const get current user. So we're going to use React cache for this. Okay, just so that the same function is being called more than once during the same render pass. So rather than the executing the function over and over again, the function is just going to be executed once and the result will be cached. Okay, so that means this function will only be executed once per request. Okay, so now we are going to create a function. So we are going to have a sync function. It's going to be an anonymous function since we already cached it and assigned it to the get current user variable. Okay, so the data type is going to be promises. The return data type, since it's an async function, so it's going to be promise, and then it's going to be user session or null. It's going to be null if the user is not signed in, but if the user is signed in, then the return data type is going to be user session. All right, okay, so we need to have a promise here. Open the brackets. Okay, so now we're going to have a try catch. Okay, that reminds me, in our middleware, okay, at this point where we updated the expiration time of our session, this is an asynchronous call, so there is the possibility that there can be network failure. Okay, so we are going to wrap this in a try catch block. Okay, but we're just going to use a custom try catch wrapper, since this is just a single line async operation. So I'm just going to wrap this in a function just to undo any possible network error. Okay, so now let's go back to our session. Okay, so first off, we are going to be checking if these headers are available, if they are available on the request. Okay, if they are available on the request headers. So if they are available, we are just going to use them. If they are not available, then we can proceed to validate the user session. So we're going to have const. Okay, so we're going to have headers, or let's call it headers list. Okay, so we're going to await this, then we're going to have the headers function imported from next headers. Okay, then we are going to say const user id is equal to, we're going to have headers list list dot get. Okay, so what are we getting? We are getting the user id. Let me just copy it to avoid typo errors. Okay, I'm going to paste that in session. All right, I'm going to paste that here. Okay, we need just a single open parenthesis. Okay, now we are going to have user role, and that's going to be headers list, okay, dot get. All right, and I'm going to, okay, I'm going to my middleware, and I'm going to copy all of this. Okay, so if the page that is currently being rendered, if the page is part of the pages that the middleware has executed for and the user session has already been validated, so we are just going to grab the user ID and the user role from the request headers. Okay, that's what we are doing at this point. Okay, so we need to check if both of them are true. So I'm going to say if user ID is true and if user role is true. If both of them are true, then that means they are available on the request headers. That means the middleware has run for that route. Okay, so what we are going to return is going to be user schema, user session schema. We need to user object, which is going to be ID. Okay, so we need to turn the string to a number, right? So we're going to have user ID. Okay, and the role is going to be user role. All right, so if both of them are valid, then the validation is going to be successful, and that is going to be returned. Okay, now if this condition is not true, that means these headers are not available on the request. Then we cannot do a manual validation of the user session. Okay, so we're going to have const session ID. So we're going to be getting it from the user cookies. So we're going to use the cookies function. I think the cookies should have already been imported. Let's check cookies. Okay, it's already imported. So since we just want to get the session ID, we can just get it at this point. So we have dot get, and then we are going to have a cookie session key. If it is available, we need to get the value. All right. If the session ID is available on the cookie, we are just going to grab the value. Okay. So if the session ID is not true, so we have session ID. If it is not true, we're just going to return null. All right, so that means the user is not signed in. But if it is true, then we need to get the user from the Redis database. Let's call it raw user. Then we're going to have a wait Redis client dot get. Okay, so we need to pass a key base of, okay, we have session, okay, and then we have the session ID, okay, so that is going to get the user if the user is in a database. Now we need to validate our user, so we have user session schema dot pass. Okay, then we are going to be passing our raw user, and just in case there was an error while passing this, or there was an error when fetching the user from our database, then we are just going to return null to assume that the user is currently not signed in, or this user session is not valid. So all we do there is to get the user ID and role from the request headers. Possibly the page that we're about to render is part of the pages that the middleware has executed on. So if the middleware has executed on that page, then there is no need to go and get the user again from the Redis database. You can just grab the user credential from the headers and then use it to validate the user. But if both of these are not true, then that means the page that is to be rendered is a page that that the middleware has not executed on. Then we are going to manually get the user session ID, get the user from our Redis database, and then validate the user structure. Okay, so with this now we are getting the user from this function, and by caching the function, it means the function will only be executed once per request. Okay, we are not going to be using that here, so we are going to be using that here to conditionally render the sign out button. Okay, so here we are going to have a user. If user is true, then we are going to be rendering the logout button. But if user is null, then the logout button will not be rendered. We need to import this function from session. Okay, so what is this condition will always be true since, oh sorry, we need to await this all right, so all thanks to TypeScript function. This should be a sync function to use await. Okay, so we should be good. And one thing that we need to also put in place, it's just minor. We need to mark this file as only as server only file. I'm going to import, and we have a server only. Now the logic we have there, we only want them to be executed on the server. Okay, so now we have our sign out button. We'll be dealing with actually signing out the user in our next video. So now let's see if we are good with our sign out button. The user is currently signed in now. Okay, so I'm going to manually sign the user out by deleting the session ID in our cookie. So I'm going to delete this, then I'm going to refresh our page. Okay, so you can see now that our sign out button is not rendered. Assuming we didn't do all of this, where is our navigation? Assuming we did not do all of this, then we are going to be having the sign out button rendered. Let me comment all of this out so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to get rid of this and get rid of this. So if I save that, I'm going to see that my sign out button will be displayed. Okay, so by validating our user session, we are able to conditionally render our sign out button. Okay, so you can see that sign out button is no longer rendered. Okay, so in our next video, we'll be dealing with actually signing out the user programmatically by clicking the sign out button. You know, currently I'm manually deleting the session ID. So in our next video, we'll be programmatically handling the user signing out. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.